Now, the country's health sector is facing a partial paralysis with nurses and clinical workers going on strike. Patients are unable to get effective care owing to this. Today, we have Nambale Member of Parliament joining us for our daily analysis of events happening in the country. Alongside, we shall be going in depth in matters your health as we speak to Dr. Fitness, while also revisiting how home training is becoming the new norm with veteran trainer James Benoni Nyambok. I'm your host, Michael Gitonga, and welcome to the broadcast from wherever you are tuning in from. Tweet us and share your feedback via our Twitter handles, KTN News KE, or you can also tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. Let's get this show started with a quick look at our press review, and we start off with international dailies, where we go to The Citizen, which is Tanzania's, a daily where we have video. Magufuli sacks senior district official over abuse of power. In his characteristic style, Magufuli is a no-nonsense leader and, of course, has faced a lot of criticism for some of the decisions he makes. And there he goes again. He sacks senior district official over abuse of power, and this was in a public rally. Let's take a look at what's happening across the border, and that's in Uganda with the Daily Monitor. Museveni hired foreigners to torture Ugandans, says Amuriat, and we know that Uganda has been facing quite a lot of instability in regards to, as they prepare for the presidential elections, and we do know that Bobi Wine has been arrested. He's been in and out of prison a number of times. We've had protests, and now comes out Amuriat with this accusation that they hired foreigners to torture Ugandans. Well, do get yourself a copy of the Monitor or go online and get it to see what the details on that are. Let's now move on to the East African, or rather the Rwanda Today, where Rwandans reject request to report suspects Burundian coup plotters, and there was an appeal for them to report coup plotters, but that seems not to be the way they want to go. And of course, that is going to be seen how that's going to roll out. Let's take a look at the final paper, internationally speaking, and that's a BBC, where you have US reports first known case of COVID variant. We do know that the UK and South Africa have been reported to have a variant, a mutation of the COVID-19 virus, which is 70% more infectious than the current one that we were dealing with. So US now reports first known case of COVID variant, and that again throwing a spanner into the works. We do know that the US has the highest number of COVID-19 cases and deaths reported world over, and that of course becomes sticking point for which President Biden is going to be coming in to see whether he can deal with soon as he takes over office in January. That's what we have on the international dailies, but now let's turn focus to looking at what we have on our local dailies, and we are joined via video link from Busia by Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi, Member of Parliament for Nambale. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
All right, and we're going to go straight into what we have this morning, and we start off with the Standard, and the Standard has a similar headline, or rather it is dealing with a similar subject. On the Standard, it is decision time, and this is referring to the Deputy President, given that we have 4 by-elections that are coming up. Msambweni, of course, I'm sure, was a shot in the arm in terms of energy for the Deputy President and those allied to him. On the Daily Nation, we have it as between a rock and a hard place. And this again is talking about what the Deputy President has to face, particularly starting next year with the 4 by-elections and the fact that he doesn't seem to be a member of the Jubilee party. Mheshimiwa, do you agree that he is between a rock and a hard place?
No, I do not agree at all. I think that they are dramatizing differently. I'm sure this is coming down the decision lane, the DP and his team. It's clear that he is not operating for purpose of electoral candidates within the space of Jubilee. And I don't think he's going to try and go that direction. He'll probably follow the Msambweni example. He'll probably come in with either independent candidates or candidates of small parties that may be affiliating with him. So I really don't think he's between a rock and a hard place at all. And I don't think that will be the big issue. So I don't agree with that perspective.
What about the standard which says it's decision time? And this is because in Jubilee, he's definitely not very comfortable there, despite the fact that he's the deputy party leader. We even have the likes of Murathe, who says that we have managed to get him and his allies out of Jubilee, and now they can look at new allies that they're going to join up. Wouldn't you then agree that the deputy president has got a decision to make, whether to remain in the party or to bolt out?
Yeah, I think that is indeed that is correct. That he has to make a decision whether to be, I would say, whether to be explicit, to come out openly, or to operate undercover. And you remember, party membership will be defined in this case as getting the consent of the party, the cover of the party in terms of candidates, the official support, not financial or otherwise. But I think that that decision is not one that is really has come to a head for him, because he still has got space to function and operate through the other means that we have just described. But indeed, it is true that that as far as Jubilee is concerned, they will deny him official sanction, official support, official use of the logo and letterheads and material and space that they have been doing apparently. So, but he's been operating. I think it may be less comfortable than if he had the full party backing, but it's operable. I think it's going to work for him, especially because it's just by election, not a general election, and he could be using this to test out whatever models he himself may be running. So may the mother party be doing also in their own way, running their models of how to push him out.
Okay.
So I do not think that's a decision. It's really critical time, but it's a moment in decision making.
All right. What do you make of the new party that, or rather the United Democratic Party alliance that is now requesting to change its slogan to Kazi ni Kazi and the symbol of a wheelbarrow? There's been all manner of narratives going round that this could be in preparation for the deputy president to use as a vehicle come 2022. Do you think there is any weight in that narrative?
I think there's weight in the, certainly I think there's a weight in the narrative, but I think that it may not be the vehicle, but I think it's probably one of the vehicles, or the way in which he'll organize himself. It's a point at what may be coming. And he could be testing the waters to see how they react to the United Democratic Party Alliance. I think that is the United Democratic Alliance, to see how they react. But I think Michael agreed that is an indication of how he might be wanting to organize his affairs by using the new party and perhaps by using affiliate parties and so on. So I think, yes, it's a pointer to what they may be intending to do. And with the wheelbarrow as the symbol, it is a non-verbal communication that's quite loud.
All right, and what do you make of decision for the deputy president, or rather, what would you think would be the best way for him to play? Is it to stick it in Jubilee despite the fact that he's very uncomfortable there, given that that's the party that put him as deputy president, or at some point would he have to make that bold decision and quit as deputy party leader, regardless of what implications that may have for a deputy president?
I think it's uncomfortable. I suspect it's uncomfortable for him, but I suspect that it may be equally uncomfortable for Jubilee. I think Jubilee would have been much more comfortable if they had been rid of this problem that they have got within their midst. So this discomfort is on both sides. I don't know which side has more, but I suspect that on the part of the deputy president, he'll probably hang out on the side that gives him his official position for as long as he can run it. I personally do not think that he would even attempt to bolt out in the course of the year 2021. I suspect that he'll bolt out at a time when it's consequential, whether he's in or out, and he'll perhaps be on the bit, on the party, the election bit. Right. So I do not expect such a decision to be done anytime soon.
Okay. Well, let's wait and see. It looks like 2021 is going to be a rather interesting time, politically speaking. Of course, we still have the building bridges and referendum, to think about and to see how that's going to roll out. But let's wait and see. There's also a story on the front page of the Standard, while we're still at that. Raila, why we lost Msambweni. And he was in Mombasa, or rather in the coastal region, to try and just find out what is it that happened that an ODM, or rather an area that was thought to be ODM strong, was taken by an independent candidate. And your thoughts on this, especially reflecting and looking at the 4 by-elections that we have, given that even in Nairobi, they seem to have pulled out of, or rather they're supporting a Jubilee candidate, and this is what is now being called the handshake candidate. Your thoughts on this, Mheshimiwa?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea that Honorable Raila is going back to the drawing board and reflecting and discussing. There may be a lot going on in the background to try and really understand what happened. And I think probably they now know a lot more than has come out in the media. I think one angle in which they must be looking at very closely is the old adage, the old saying that all elections are local. And it may have little to do with the power play among the national leaders. It may have a lot to do with power play, but maybe power play at the local level. There are long-standing issues, as we know, at the coast, of issues of comparative supremacy of the various groupings. And now, roughly, in the 3 major counties, Kwale, Mombasa, and Kilifi, they both do things rather differently, even though we try and paint them as if it was sort of one painting on our canvas. Mm-hmm. So I am sure that they're looking at that, but perhaps not even concentrating on the national differences or the national strategies. They must be concentrating.
All right. And we have a problem there with the network, and as we try and establish that, of course, we're looking
how they can work within the local political power setting.
Right. All right, and maybe before we finish on that, your thoughts on whether it's a plus for democracy when we see what's happened in Msambweni, where Jubilee did not field a candidate, and because of the handshake. In Nairobi, that seems to be taking the same trend. We have Jubilee with 2 candidates. ODM was even late to submit their nomination papers. But they are likely to support, and according to this article on the Daily Nation, it says that Raila party pulls out of Nairobi race. Do you think that's a plus for democracy, or is it retrogressive?
I think it's in a way retrogressive. I think that competitions, political competitions, particularly by the parties that are well established, who, by the way, are being funded heavily by the state. The state funds them because they play a role in democracy. It's not funding the smaller parties. The only 2 major parties receiving this assistance, major party funding, is Jubilee and ODM. And these funds are supposed to help them build internal democracy in their own parties. So by the time they produce candidates for competition, and the manner in which they compete would be a manner that's increasingly consistent with the political values, good practice. When things are done through the boardroom, to connive so that to get a particular outcome, they're reducing the democratic space.
Right.
And I have a feeling that it seems just a by-election going to run for another 14 months or so. They're testing the ground. But I doubt that they can go to a general election and do the same thing, because they could then be outdone at the end of the day. But I think it is an experiment. For now, to maintain the handshake and the cordiality and friendliness that they have, but I don't think it's the way to go in the long term.
All right, interesting times we are in Kenya in regards to democracy, where we have the opposition party, if we can call it that, joining hands with government. And of course, that leaves us wondering if we really do have a strong opposition party. But there you go. That's, of course, waiting to see how that's going to pan out. On page 2, we have TSC recalling officers on leave ahead of opening. Of course, that's another big one. In a week or so, we have students going back to school. Do you feel that we have prepared sufficiently? We are ready to have students go back to school, particularly given the infrastructure. We've hardly done much in regards to expansion when it comes to schools.
Michael, I think that there is a high emotional preparedness, I should put it that way, in the sense that the government has been under big pressure to reopen schools, come what may, to muddle through with the corona. Parents have also been under intense pressure to have schools open so that children can go back to school and occupy their time differently from what they seem to be occupying their time with. We have had headlines, and indeed we know it's the case, that there have been lots of problems with teenage pregnancies and so on. So they may be wishing now that at long last their kids will be away from home, rather they occupy their time going to school and so on. But there are real challenges on the ground, Michael. One, that the issue of fumigating the environment,
right,
the school environment, it's okay, the day-to-day cleaning. I think many schools, if I talk from my own constituency, many schools would have water buckets and water and maybe soap, at least to start with. Soap, keeping the soap up for the rest of the term may be a challenge.
All right, and we apologize for that freeze. It's a network issue as we establish that connection.
Well, next week with that.
We are focusing on schools and generally whether we are prepared as a country to have students going back to school. Of course, one of the biggest concerns that we have had is the infrastructure, and there has been no expansion on that. And COVID-19 is not going anywhere anytime soon. Then again, students cannot stay at home forever. But maybe that requires that we have very innovative thinking around education and how to ensure that our children still continue to learn with or without going to school. That, of course, it remains a challenge. Mheshimiwa, do we need to rethink how we have our schools set up? Because we are still stuck in a mindset and a mind frame where students go to a class and are taught from there. Do we need to maybe invest more in technology?
Yes, I think, Michael, and as you remember, Jubilee started off on the right path in this respect then. You could almost say, if they had done the school computer lab, what was it, laptops.
The laptop,
program.
yes.
Yes, and they were a very, very effective program of school electrification and connectivity to the grid and connectivity to alternative sources of energy. If they had continued with that, it would have come in really handy, because then the alternative classroom would have been a feasible idea that in fact they probably could get a long distance learning through their own iPads and laptops, whatever those were. But you know, that program was abandoned just as it was succeeding. I did not even understand the logic behind it. The power company, the Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Commission, we call it REA for short. REA was on, as far as, say, Busia was concerned, I know it is true, or many parts of the country, but maybe not all of them for sure. Where the grid lines were, they were doing connection, very systematic connections of all schools and so on. So this would have been really a moment to harvest. If that program had been completed, if the tablets that were used had been completed, we would have had a section of schools that is now able to receive sort of long distance distant learning as well as digital learning. But I think it's going to be a big, big challenge. But it is time indeed to reflect on how we might do this in the future. Corona, for one, if the extent is a motivation, it is a motivation in a perverse way. Corona is going to be around with us, because if you look at all scientific ways of exiting Corona, exiting people, it takes a while. It's a slow process, yeah. So it's going to be with us quite a bit of time. And I'm worried now that people are now, in many cases, beginning to say, well, no, we can live with this thing. This thing is bad, people are dying, but we can live with it. That may keep it around for a very, very long time.
Absolutely. And of course, in that regard, we may be seeing an upsurge come next year, given that people have been partying and, getting together and not necessarily observing social distancing within this Christmas period. But that aside, there's also an interesting article here on page 7 of the Standard. Will IEBC clear Waitito for city governor's job? Let's start with your thoughts on Waitito running for governor of Nairobi after he has been impeached.
I think that's very sad. It's a sad day. Our systems must allow exit, voluntary or involuntary. The courts have decided, they have made a judgment on the character of the individual in respect of quality of leadership, or even the legality of his leadership style. I think it would be a sad day simply rotating around from one corner to the other and back and so on. with the same fellows. I think it's very sad indeed. And across the political spectrum throughout the country, I think that this is a matter that is looked at carefully. What is IBC looking at? Is by saying, "Oh, you are fit to contest here." What message are they sending out? What history do they have on the guy's problems and performance, or the nature of issues for which he was accused? Is having removed him from office enough consolation, as it were, or compensation or retribution? Is it enough? What is it they were looking at? I'm not quite sure what they were looking at. That, for me, does not augur very well if that's how we're going to proceed. We'll have the same issues, the same players, and the same outcomes.
Right. Now, Chapter 6 of the Constitution is all about leadership and integrity. What are your thoughts in terms of the environment we are in, politically speaking, to even give Ferdinand Waitito the audacity to, dare even declare that you'd want to go for governorship? I mean, we've hardly even had the dust settle with him being impeached, yet he feels he's in an environment that is free enough to allow him to go ahead. So what are your thoughts on how we view leadership and integrity despite the fact that it's in the Constitution?
I think we have, that's, I think, one clear indication that we have a Constitution that was very progressive, that was foresighted in many ways, that one in which we could play within its confines, within its specifications, and have good politics and run the nation, as it were. But indeed, people don't seem to worry about that. So it's almost as if the calls for amendments to the Constitution have virtually thrown out the existing Constitution, which will be quite sad, because the discussion that we have in the public domain are supposed to touch on certain articles that, in the eyes of those who are seeking to get it changed, would make it a better Constitution. They're not throwing out the old Constitution. If we were writing a new Constitution, we probably ought to get back to the drawing board and ask the people if this is the time to write a completely new Constitution. And what kind of Constitution would it be? In Kenya, with the high levels of impunity, it looks like no Constitution at all is the best Constitution. They let people act as they wish. After all, they are rarely followed. They are not taken to court. Impunity in many, many ways. We are told tax payments are not always timely or what it should be. People with previous records, including criminal records of various offenses, are just doing what they choose. And because of the balance in these handshake days among the various agents, many things can get away. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. Don't make noise here and not to make a noise there. We can't run this republic like that. We are going to go down to the lowest level within this community, the East African community, for example, or worse. So I really think that that's not a good indicator. I don't think it augurs very well.
Right. All right, Honorable Sakwa Binyasi, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning just to review what is making headlines on the dailies on this side of the earth. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're going to take a short break right here on Morning Express, but I'd like you to get yourselves ready, particularly if you're at home and you've been feeling like you need to do a bit of exercise. We have Dr. Fitness and Spin Master in studio who's going to take us through some exercises that you can do at home using your body weight. These are exercises that you do not necessarily need to go to a gym. You do not need to invest in any equipment. It's purely just using your body weight to ensure that you keep fit. And I can guarantee you that one of the things that comes top of New Year's resolutions is weight loss, which I prefer to refer to as health gain as opposed to trying to lose or gain weight. It is health gain. So that's coming up right here on Morning Express. So we take a break. When we come back, let's get fit.